Bienvenue à la réunion 20.
Committee on Industry, Science, and Technology. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So that you are aware, the webcast will only show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. To ensure an orderly meeting, I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen, either floor, English, or French. Please select the language that you prefer. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. For those on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. And for the services of the interpreters, please do not speak over each other so that the interpreters can do their important work. Now, this is the key rule. As is my normal practice, I will hold up this yellow card for when you have 30 seconds remaining in your intervention. I will hold up a red card for when your time for questions has expired. Please respect the time limits so that everyone has an opportunity to ask their questions. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on November 5th, 2020, the committee is meeting today to continue its study on the development and support of the aerospace industry. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses. From the Boeing Company, Boeing Canada, and Boeing Engineering Test and Technology, we have Sir Michael Arthur, President of Boeing International, Mr. Charles Duff Sullivan, Managing Director, Mr. William Lyons, Senior Director, Global Technology and Global Engineering. From the Canadian Council for Aviation and Aerospace, Mr. Robert Donald, Executive Director. From the Canadian Taxpayer Federation, Aaron Woodrick, Federal Director. From Hexagon Autonomy and Positioning Division, Jason Hamilton, Chief Revenue Officer. From KF Aerospace, Tracy Medvey, President. And from Rheinmetall Canada Inc., Mr. Stéphane Orly, Président et Chef de la Direction. Each witness will present for 5 minutes, followed by rounds of questions. We will start with Boeing Canada. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair and the committee members for this chance to speak with you today. Our aerospace industry and commercial air carriers have suffered greatly during COVID-19 pandemic. The air travel restrictions brought in to address these real and immediate public health needs have brought the industry to a near standstill. The good news is that with vaccines and their efficacy, the industry is beginning to recover, and with it will come a demand for newer, more fuel-efficient planes. Before I dive into sharing all the ways that Boeing is building for a safer, cleaner future in aerospace, I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to reflect on our rich history and valued history with the aerospace industry in Canada that stretches back over 100 years now. So in March 1919, Bill Boeing and the pilot Eddie Hubbard flew 60 letters from Vancouver to Seattle in Washington State in a Boeing C-700 seaplane. So that was the first ever international airmail to reach the United States. And if you put a tiny personal aside, about 30 years after that, I was born in Vancouver, and I'm a fifth generation, half Canadian prairie farmer back. So I'm delighted to be with the committee today. Thank you for inviting me. Back to aerospace. So Canada has since then become a valued customer and supplier and a partner for Boeing in both the defense and the commercial sectors. Boeing Winnipeg is one of the largest aerospace composite manufacturing centers in Canada, employing well over 1,000 people. The plant produces hundreds of unique composite parts and assemblies for all our current 7Seas jetliners. And over the past 50 years, it's evolved into a state-of-the-art facility. The skilled team of engineers and technicians develop new manufacturing techniques for lightweight aerospace products, which earning their place as what Boeing calls a global center of excellence in complex composites. Across the world, Boeing believes strongly in community engagement, and the Boeing Winnipeg team partner with charitable organizations there to support STEM education, veterans, and other prevailing community needs through grants and employee volunteering. Actually, across Canada, we contribute more than $1 million in that type of sponsorship and grants. Boeing Vancouver is a leading provider of advanced software solutions to the airline industry, and we've got 200 employees there. Since 2000, their product offerings have evolved from just aviation maintenance to now include supplier management, flight monitoring, and aviation marketing solutions. Boeing Research and Technology is partnering with Canadian universities in an area of augmented virtual reality technologies, autonomous systems, data analytics, AI, and advanced composites materials. We're a founding member of the Canadian Digital Technology Supercluster based in BC. And through this public-private partnership, our Vancouver team led a research project on the use of augmented reality for aircraft maintenance and inspection. And that's part of the Digital Aviation Record System, DARS project team, that was just approved for funding through the BC Supercluster. This will help ensure that Canadian industry remains competitive and reduces waste and CO2 emissions through the adoption of data analytics, additive manufacturing, digital manufacturing, cloud computing, and the Internet of Things technologies. So these mutually beneficial partnerships will continue to drive value for both Boeing and secure Canada's global position as a leader in these areas way into the future. Boeing Defence has partnered with the Canadian Armed Forces for many years, particularly with our Chinook capabilities. And we're excited about the Future Fighter Capability Project, where our Super Hornet offering is one of the candidates for modernizing the Royal Canadian Air Force's fleet. And you heard Duff Sullivan, General Sullivan, a very distinguished former RCAF officer, who we are absolutely thrilled is now the head of our operation in Canada. Really exciting to have Duff on the team. Boeing is committed to 100% industrial and technological benefits, the ITB obligation, measured in Canadian content value, and that will provide work packages to Canadian companies of all sizes and speciality. So as commercial air travel resumes and restrictions ease, safeguarding passengers will remain a top priority for our work, and with that will come a commitment to innovating and operating to make the world a better place. We want to work in Canada on sustainable aviation fuels to help do that. Final point, Madam Chairman, before the pandemic, there were 620 commercial flights every day across Canada on Boeing planes. And as demand comes back and more fuel-efficient next-generation aeroplanes get taken up, we hope to work with our 500 Canadian suppliers right across the country to sell more planes. So when you buy Boeing, we will say you're buying Canadian. There are many other exciting opportunities, but let me leave it there in the interest of time. And thank you for listening so far. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much, Sir Arthur. Our next presentation is by the Canadian Council for Aviation and Aerospace. Mr. Donald, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Incorporated in 1993, CCAA is a not-for-profit national partnership that works with industry, organized labor, educators, and government. We work exclusively on a national labor market strategy for our industry. I wish to speak to you today about the need to retain our skilled workforce and the lack of training capacity to produce graduates for our industry in Canada. The demand for skilled maintenance workers pre-pandemic, our industry in Canada needed an additional 55,000 workers in 2025. By 2025, only 25% of that number would be graduates from Canadian PSEs. The critical aviation labor shortage was worldwide and was well documented by ICAO, Boeing, Airbus, IATA, and many other studies. The pandemic has provided a temporary reprieve for some sectors of the industry, largely air operators, but many companies have already started to rehire workers and are having shortages. CCA consultations with industry through our national labor market strategy events, focus groups, etc., confirm that the pre-pandemic shortage of workers will return relatively soon. The pandemic has resulted in a loss of approximately 35% of the prior workforce due to those being laid off, choosing to retire, or seek employment in other sectors. As the recovery takes hold, there'll be a surge in demand, which cannot be met simply from trying to rehire those laid off. Airlines have grounded planes, delayed maintenance for up to a year. This has created a significant pent-up demand. Aircraft being returned to service also require extensive maintenance, up to 16 days for a crew of 5 people per aircraft. As the recovery takes hold, there'll be a massive surge in demand for maintenance work. If Canadian maintenance, repair, and overhaul companies like KF can't handle the demand, they'll be forced to go offshore. Lack of training capacity. Canadian colleges do not have the capacity to meet anywhere near the demand from industry. Every aviation program at colleges in Canada had a wait list prior to the pandemic, except ENA in Montreal. Despite that, they were only producing 25% of the needed graduates. Number of graduates from aviation programs in 21-22 will be reduced by 40%. Aviation programs at colleges are expensive. Most colleges agree it's not realistic to expect governments to expand capacity at brick and mortar institutions. Lack of local training facilities. In Quebec, Manitoba, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, there's only one college in each province with AME programs. In the 4 Atlantic provinces, there are only 2, one of which has currently suspended its program. There's no aviation programs north of 60 in the territories of the Yukon. Those from outside major cities obviously have to relocate for 2 to 3 years to a major city to get their training. It's costly, it's expensive. Transport Canada restrictions. Prior to the pandemic, Transport Canada did not allow colleges to use blended learning or online learning. Only hours in classroom counted. Colleges were caught unprepared by the need to transition, and it's taken them a while. Transport Canada has temporarily extended the use of online to the end of this year, but they haven't indicated to colleges whether that'll be continued. So colleges don't know how to invest for that long-term strategy. Most don't have the expertise or the budgets to convert to online. TC-approved colleges are required to follow woefully outdated curricula that hasn't been updated for 20 years. Colleges are still obliged to teach how to fix cloth wings and to maintain parts that are no longer used on airplanes. It's noteworthy that TC requires hours-based study. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to do it, you have to do the hours, not competency-based, a transition that virtually everyone is looking to. It's also noteworthy that only about 50% of graduates from college programs meet Transport Canada requirements and get no credit for their education. In conclusion, industry needs increased training capacity through new, more accessible, efficient, effective, and targeted ways of training. It's a global competition out there for talent and for the work. If we don't have the workforce, the work goes offshore and doesn't come back. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Donald. Our next presenter is Mr. Aaron Woodrick from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the committee for having me today. For those of you unfamiliar with the Taxpayers Federation, we are a national nonpartisan nonprofit with over 235,000 supporters across Canada. We focus our advocacy on 3 general areas: lower taxation, less government waste, and accountable and transparent government. And I don't know if the committee members have noticed, but we are the only witness here today that does not have a direct link to the aerospace industry. And I assure that it's not my goal to alienate everybody else on the panel today, but I warn that I may end up achieving it anyway. I wanted to start really by just posing a very simple question that I think the community needs to ask itself before answering any other question. And that is, what is it about aerospace as an industry that makes it different than other industries? And I think that question is an important one because the normal starting point for most industries is that they don't require study by a parliamentary committee in the first place. Every day in Canada, we see businesses come and go. Some of them succeed, some of them fail. And in the vast majority of cases, and I would exclude, I want to be clear, I would exclude the present circumstances of this pandemic. And I understand a lot of the comments today are going to be with regard to the specific circumstances of the pandemic. I would agree that is different than business as usual, and so may require special consideration. But generally speaking, the idea of governments riding to the rescue of an industry or business does not normally occur. So we need to ask ourselves what it is about aerospace that makes it different as an industry. Now, one argument that we often hear is that it employs a lot of people. That's true, but it's also true of many other industries, and very few of those other industries receive the level of subsidy that aerospace has historically received in Canada. Another argument we often hear is that aerospace jobs pay well. That's also true, but if one has to count the cost of the subsidies, which we should be doing because the net benefit to the economy, to Canada, and indeed to government coffers needs to include that cost as well, that argument also loses quite a bit of its attraction. Finally, it's often argued that aerospace is a strategic industry. It's crucial to an innovation economy. If that's so, it's not really clear what the strategy is other than endless subsidy, since the industry has not ever become self-sustaining in the last half century, nor has it ever been explained how innovation is best served in any industry, not just aerospace, by shielding and protecting businesses from the disciplining forces of market competition. Now, at this point, I'm sure that we have some committee members and certainly some folks on the panel thinking that that sounds very nice in theory, Mr. Woodrick, but it's terribly naive. You know, the world's not an economics textbook, and the global aerospace industry is not a real competitive market. And the harsh reality is that foreign competitors to Canadian aerospace all receive support from the respective governments. So Canada must do the same in order to level the playing field. And I take that as a very significant rebuttal, but it seems to me that it also concedes right off the top that taxpayer subsidies are not some sort of exciting opportunity, but really just a grim necessity, something that we must endure. And if they are a necessity, then we need to ask ourselves how far Canada should be prepared to go to defend this industry. If a Canadian company is up against a foreign competitor, which has access to exponentially larger subsidies from their own governments, how many billions of dollars should Canadian taxpayers be prepared to spend? Should it be $1 billion? Should it be 10 billion or 50 billion? Is there any threshold where anyone within the industry would concede that the costs start to exceed the benefits? And if so, what would that threshold be? I think another thing that's important for the committee to consider is what else are you prepared to forego in order to subsidize this industry? Despite what some folks may insist, resources are not infinite, and every dollar of support that goes to this industry is a dollar that cannot go towards something else. And if you were to ask your constituents what their highest priorities are for their own tax dollars, how many of them would tell you that subsidizing aerospace would make that list? I would just close by saying that I don't begrudge anyone in aerospace coming before you to make the case for government support for their industry. That is their job. And if their historical record is any indication, they're incredibly good at doing it. I would only ask that the committee bear in mind that when everyone in front of them is urging them to spend money, and they also stand to benefit directly from that money, that they are not exactly getting a representative sample of views on the issue. There are millions of Canadians who would end up paying the freight for such subsidies who will never appear before this committee. And all I ask is that you consider those unrepresented voices as well when making decisions about how you will support the industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Mr. Hamilton. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today on behalf of Hexagon's Autonomy and Positioning Division based in Calgary. At Hexagon, we've been on the cutting edge of global positioning technologies for over 25 years. Our high-precision GPS products are used across many industries, enabling safe navigation from point A to point B. Our navigation technology can be found in many civilian and military aircraft, as well as in the ground infrastructure that enables the use of GPS for airborne guidance and precision landing. So why is a GPS company here talking to you today? It's because GPS is an enabler for modernization and automation of aerospace, and Canada is poised to be a technology leader in this transition. I'm sure you've heard from others in these sessions that the demands on our airspace are growing for shipping and logistics, for surveillance, for movement of people, for emergency response, to name a few. Piloted aircraft alone will not fully meet the future demands of these services. Our future airspace will look much more crowded than it does today. We'll need to support safe, simultaneous operation of piloted, remotely piloted, and autonomous aircraft that use GPS as their primary means of navigation. Canada is uniquely positioned to benefit from airspace modernization, given our vast geography, the opening of the north, and remote communities with challenging logistics and transportation needs. Accurate and reliable positioning is a critical requirement for airspace modernization. It will enable cooperation of piloted and autonomous vehicles and allow operation of unmanned aircraft beyond the pilot's visual line of sight. Current regulation limits operation of these aircraft to short travel distances and limited landing areas. GPS is a critical technology for achieving better use of our airspace, but it has significant limitations that must be mitigated to ensure it can be used safely. GPS navigation relies on unimpeded and uninterrupted access to satellite signals that are broadcast in the L-band radio spectrum. The spectrum is becoming increasingly crowded and is highly susceptible to both intentional and unintentional signal interference. In addition, bad actors are increasingly able to spoof or hack GPS signals to interfere with vehicle navigation. Interference and spoofing are serious threats to aircraft and also to GPS infrastructure installed at Canada's airports and used for precision landings. The good news is that industry is rising to the challenge in addressing these limitations, but innovations to GPS technologies are outpacing aerospace regulations. So how can government help? Firstly, awareness, monitoring, and most importantly, enforcement mechanisms are needed at the national level to protect the radio frequency spectrum used for satellite navigation. Secondly, investment is needed to protect Canadian GPS infrastructure from jamming and spoofing. Off-the-shelf solutions are available for this. Thirdly, this is a global market, and Canadian companies need assistance to become competitive in exporting our aerospace technologies worldwide. There's two main areas of focus. Canadian manufacturers need access to new navigation satellite constellations being launched by the EU and the UK. Of highest priority is access to the EU Galileo constellation, specifically the publicly regulated satellite signal, or PRS. The Galileo constellation is configured to provide better performance at high latitudes than GPS, an important aspect for operation in our northern territories. And the signal structure of PRS makes it robust against the threat of spoofing and hacking. Canada's membership in the European Space Agency may be a way to pursue this. On the other front, to be successful as exporters, Canadian companies also need clear export policy and guidelines. Many technologies developed toward modernized civil aviation will fall under export controls. To be competitive worldwide, we need collaborative, responsive, predictable, and transparent export controls. In the past, this has been a competitive advantage for Canada, but in our experience, we have lost this advantage recently. Canadian companies like ours are ready to invest in technology and bring products to market, but the investment is risky without a clear timeline for updated regulatory framework. Canada needs to work closely with regulators in other jurisdictions like the US and the EU to update navigation standards. We also need timelines for implementation of new technologies into aircraft flight navigation systems. With an easy to navigate regulatory framework, Canada can become a destination for autonomy development. Together, we have the opportunity to empower Canadian companies to lead the world in technologies for autonomous aircraft. We hope you consider our input. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Our next presenter is Tracy Medvey. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. As mentioned, I'm currently the president of the KF Aerospace Group of companies headquartered in Kelowna, British Columbia. Previously was the president of Canadian North Airlines, so I've seen this industry from various perspectives throughout my 35-year career. I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide you with our comments and observations related to the development and support of the Canadian aerospace industry. KF is a privately owned company founded in 1970. We provide high-paying jobs and training to a current employee contingent of more than 900 women and men at bases in Kelowna, Hamilton, Vancouver, and Portage la Prairie. Approximately 20% of our staff are women, of which half are technical employees, including aircraft maintenance engineers, aeronautical engineers, and pilots. We provide maintenance, repair, overhaul, and aeronautical engineering services to a broad range of commercial aviation customers from Canada, the US, and elsewhere. Until COVID struck over the past 5 years, we have grown our MRO revenues by 10% per year and self-funded, no subsidies, approximately $37 million in expansion of our MRO facilities in that time. Our MRO services are provided at both Kelowna and Hamilton, where collectively we have over 750,000 square feet of hangar, shop support, and administrative facilities. and can service up to 15 concurrent narrow-body aircraft in maintenance, modification, and cargo conversions at any given time. We also self-funded $14 million to develop a purpose-built facility for Mohawk College's aviation program at Hamilton Airport that just opened this year. In addition to being the country's largest commercial aircraft maintenance, repair, overhaul, and aeronautical engineer provider, we operate a cargo airline and an aircraft leasing company. Since 2005, we have also had the contract to train Canada's military pilots in Portage-la Prairie, continuing a tradition of Canadians training military pilots for the Commonwealth dating back to 1940. In short, our company represents a broad spectrum of the aviation and aerospace industry. This industry is an essential and powerful contributor to Canada's economy. Like roads, railways, ports, and utilities, a solid aviation sector builds national strength and capacity. It's critical for our government to recognize this. But it's also critical to remember when looking at development and support of the industry that you don't lose sight of the fact that the industry is more than just the scheduled airlines and the cargo carriers. For example, airlines must rely on maintenance providers such as KF to ensure the aircraft they fly are safe and meet the exacting standards required by our regulators. Unfortunately, Canadian carriers often look to maintenance providers outside Canada to provide their heavy maintenance services. This is troubling as it threatens to erode the capabilities of the Canadian industry. It's also troubling if those same carriers are looking for the Canadian government-funded assistance. A criterion for eligibility should be required to give the carriers for the carriers to give first right of refusal to Canadian-owned and operating MROs to provide their maintenance services. Canada has Canadian-owned and operated companies such as KF, which are fully capable of providing high-quality end-to-end services in support of the industry. We cannot lose this capability. Canada is a large country. We will always be reliant on air transportation. It's an absolute necessity for our economy. Despite this, I submit there has been a long-standing tendency for our government to look upon aerospace and aviation only as a source of revenue for government coffers, as opposed to viewing the industry as a partner in the country's economic foundation and future growth. It's also important to recognize that support of the industry does not always have to include financial bailouts. Equally useful is the removal of impediments which prevent business from being able to prosper. Make it easy for airlines and aerospace companies to do business. Make it affordable for passengers to ride on Canadian carriers. Do not impose charges on the industry that will have to be passed along to our customers. Airport rents come to mind here. Monopolies like airports and NavCan simply pass along whatever their costs are to the carriers, who in turn have to pass them on to their customers. Support and become a partner in the tourism industry. Look how successful that has been for the likes of Iceland, for example. This facilitation will have the effect of ensuring the carriers have a solid income stream. They will need aircraft, many of which will be leased. They will need servicing and maintenance. Carriers, maintenance providers, and lessors will need more employees who will have decent paying jobs, will pay taxes, stimulate their local economies. The technical schools and universities will need to train more skilled aerospace workers who will pay tuition. All the players in the supply chain will contribute directly and indirectly to the tax and economic base of Canada. This is a strong model for all parties. And as an example of an unnecessary impediment, for example, due to COVID-related restrictions, we're currently having problems getting maintenance representatives into the country to be here during maintenance checks for their aircraft. Meanwhile, foreign commercial truckers are being allowed to bypass the hotel quarantine requirements. This is an unnecessary and unfair impediment to our business. As we collectively climb out of the terrible repercussions of COVID-related restrictions, keep in mind that the industry was in no way responsible for this downturn, and the speed and means of recovery is not within the industry's control. Without the right kind of support, we will lose our skilled labor. We will lose high-paying jobs that will contribute to the overall prosperity of the country. The industry's employment fell by 33% in 2020, compared with 5.2% in the broader economy. This is not the industry's fault.
Could you please wrap up, Ms. Medby?
Yeah,
a little over time.
Okay. So in short, the industry is and will always be a key contributor to Canada's economic well-being. Don't forget to consider the full supply chain, be a partner to industry, and buy Canadian. I thank you again for the opportunity to present here. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Notre prochaine présentation, c'est
Our next speaker will be Mr. Orley. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to appear before the Common Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology and to share Rheinmetall Canada's view pertaining to the study of the development and support of the aerospace industry and writ large the defense sector. Brièvement,
Briefly, Rheinmetall Canada is part of the German Rheinmetall Group and has been operating in Canada for 35 years. The group has over 25,000 employees worldwide, of which approximately 450 are in Canada. Our workforce is highly skilled and educated, and we are proud to 11% of our employees are former members of the Canadian Armed Forces and active reservists.
Canada with various vehicle integration capabilities, electronics, weapon systems, and we have expanded in recent years to robotics with unmanned ground vehicles and aviation solutions with a newly established business line, air start units, which are used by both military air forces and commercial airliners. Our current customers include the Canadian Armed Forces and the Canadian Coast Guard. We are also executing contracts in Europe, in the Middle East, in the US, and in Southeast Asia, all from our Canadian-based facilities. Rheinmetall Canada
Rheinmetall Canada benefits from a global supply chain. Over the past 5 years, we've done business with suppliers in over 35 countries, in addition to Canadian suppliers from coast to coast. In the past year, we've subcontracted with over 500 Canadian suppliers in 8 of the 10 provinces. Our domestic economic footprint has enabled us to complete $1.3 billion in industrial benefits to date. We passed our first billion in the spring of 2016, and at the time, we were only the 5th company to reach that mark. So you can understand that we are very focused on the implementation of the industrial benefits policy. This leads me today to submit to the committee some suggestions to help Canada's economic recovery.
Has to follow regulations from many departments. I will limit my recommendations to policies that are the purview of this committee. Value proposition and the ITB policy can be improved. We are the product of an offset obligation dated back in 1986. Therefore, we believe in the policy. However, a few tweaks are necessary to maintain competitiveness of our industry, improve the policy, and help kickstart the economy in the wake of the pandemic. In this regard, a hard cap of a maximum 100% of contract value and obligations should be respected. In recent years, only those that overcommit beyond the value of contract are awarded the maximum points during bid evaluations. It is our belief that in the medium and long term, Canada will suffer from limited competition as a result, as many competitors will simply not be in a position to partake in the bidding process anymore. Competitive, fair, and transparent process is beneficial to all, and we believe is weakened by the possibility of overcommitment, which we believe can be regarded as similar to dumping practices. Introduction of new multipliers for points and credits could be temporarily introduced to help specific areas of the economy. Multipliers for SMBs and more generally, the direct component of a bid could help SMBs and the industry which struggled during this pandemic. Lower the allowed maximum for bank transaction. Currently, companies can use previous investments against future or current obligations. Although it is capped, it should be lowered as to create new investment instead of having prime contractors completing their obligations with past investments. This way, we believe it would contribute to relaunch the economy with new investment. New key industrial capabilities should be added to the list of 16 included in the value proposition 2.0. We believe that some of Canada's KICs, which are present, are not represented, such as, for example, weapon systems capability. Although technical in nature, those 4 recommendations are simple. We believe those recommendations to be evolutionary, not a revolution, and cost-effective solutions for the government to implement. We believe those would greatly improve how the defense industry generates good economic output for the country. Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be very pleased to answer your questions.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Our round of questions. Our first round of questions of 6 minutes. We will start with MP Baldinelli. You have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for appearing this morning. I was particularly interested in the comments of Mr. Donald from the Canadian Council for Aviation and Aerospace and Ms. Medvi from KF Aerospace, and the concerns and matters that they brought forward in terms of retention and skills development and getting people back into the workforce. I mean, Mr. Donald, I believe you had indicated that 55,000 workers are going to be needed by 2025. And this Medvi, you had mentioned about a 33% loss in the job force. So what is it from, as we're looking, as part of this study from development and support for the aerospace industry, what is it that government can do to help foster the college training programs, the retention, the retraining that is required so that a workforce on this supply side can be maintained? Because as Mr. Donald, you had mentioned, if we don't, those jobs and those companies that Miss Medvi, for instance, operates will just go elsewhere.
I don't know who wants to go first, but as I did mention in my comments, we invested $14 million of our own money, not subsidized, to build a training college in Hamilton where we also invested in a new wide body maintenance facility to make sure that we did have a steady pipeline of new employees coming through our facilities. They're right side by side. And I actually wanted to build a tunnel between the two buildings to make sure we just moved them from the college right to our facilities. So I think there's that. I think there's also the requirement to get young people, and particularly young women. I mean, they're 50% of the population. They're hugely underrepresented in the technical side, to understand and recognize that aerospace is actually a job that it's a job that they can do, and it's a job that's out there. And so starting early in high schools and even younger, to get people to understand that these are good jobs and that they can be done here, and that they should consider that in their career choices. So I think there's a lot of things we can do, because we need to have a steady pipeline of people that are signing up to the colleges, and then we need a place for them to go to college, and then we need the facilities for them to come to work at, like KF.
Great, thank you, Ms. Medvi. Mr. Donald, any suggestions?
Thank you, Mr. Baldinelli, and thank you, Tracy. As I said, yes, we definitely need more workers. We don't have the capacity in Canada to train them. We have one college in Quebec. People from Northern Quebec have to move and come to Quebec for 3 years to go to school there. It's the same in other provinces. Transport Canada, the requirements they are imposing on approved colleges are just so woefully outdated that without improvements there, we'll never get the colleges to deliver what industry needs. So we need to, and is it realistic to expect governments to expand capacity at colleges? Those are expensive programs. They're continually closing. There used to be 6 in the Maritimes, now there's 2. So we need to look at new ways of training that are more accessible, affordable, and this doesn't require, to the Taxpayer Federation, this doesn't require more investment from government. It just requires a government strategy and transport to facilitate the use of new technology, new ways of learning. As I say, we're losing 35% to the pandemic. We need to find a way to replace them. And the national strategy that many people have spoken about needs governments at both the federal and provincial level to sit down and discuss the lack of capacity and the need to encourage people. As Tracy said, there was a federal program run by ESDC for wage career focus to get young people into the industry. They're running one now for wage subsidies for students. Those things are crucial to getting young people into the industry, and I would encourage the government to continue those programs. I can go on, but I'll stop there.
Well, thank you. And to Ms. Medvi's point, there are things that I think the government can do right now. I mean, through the Canada Border Services agencies and the crossing of maintenance workers. I know in the automotive sector, it's becoming a real problem too, getting people back and forth across the border in terms of essential work. So those are things I think that we can do now. I understand Minister Blair had mentioned as early as last week that he'd be looking into it with regards to the automotive sector and the flow of workers that way. So, I mean, that is something that we can do and ask to expand on this side as well. So, thank you on that. And now, secondly, when you talk, Mr. Donald, about the competitiveness, I mean, there's a lot of people that were talking about this Vision 2025 report, you know, from the Aerospace Industries Association of Canada that had put forward. And I mean, there are a lot of concerns that have been out there since the government came into power about the consolidation of the support programs that exist and them all wrapping up into kind of one strategic innovation fund. And I was wondering if there are concerns because of that.
Not with respect. I won't speak to anything except the labor market. I'll let AIEC and Tracy and others speak to those questions of consolidation, Mr. Baldinelli. But
well, the chair has kind of indicated I may not have the time, but I'll try in a follow up later on. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Sorry about that, MP Baldinelli.
Not a problem.
Our next round of questions goes to MP Erskine Smith. You have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I want to start with Mr. Woodrick. When it comes to bailouts, I read an article in the Globe from an economics professor at U of T and the Rotman School, Professor Chandra, who writes, the point of bailouts should be to preserve or enhance competition, not to prop up already strong companies that can exploit weakened rivals or throw money at companies that are likely to fold regardless. Do you agree with that?
I think it's probably a little more nuanced in my position. The challenge with bailout is that you tend to run into one of two problems. You're either giving money to an entity that doesn't need it, as we've seen some companies openly say, or you're giving it to companies that may not deserve it. Because as I think the professor is indicating, if they can't survive but for the subsidy, then it's probably a bad idea to give it.
But you would agree, my understanding at least of the ethos of your organization, and I follow you online, the emphasis should be on preserving competition or enhancing competition.
Yes, competition is always the better way to determine who should succeed in the marketplace. Yes, I'd agree with that.
And when it comes to the government is committed to a bailout of the sector, so when it comes to conditions that might be imposed on such a bailout, I've seen the government publicly speak about limits on executive compensation, dividends, that there be potentially climate disclosure conditions, conditions on maintaining regional routes, and the same conditions that we see in the LEAF program, for example. But the professor that I referenced goes on to write that a significant government stake, i.e. an equity stake, will ensure that future decisions around airlines are taken with the interests of consumers and employees in mind, rather than returns to shareholders and top executives. And I wonder, if we are to have a bailout as a significant condition, do you think an equity stake would make sense?
I think the challenge there then is now you are essentially marrying government into the entity. And I realize that the purpose of joining them at the hip with the company is to ensure accountability for the taxpayer support. But the flip side is then, there's a reason that most businesses are not joining at the hip with government. If you then have businesses making decisions for reasons other than profitability and what their shareholders expect, you run into a different set of problems. I would say that, I've made that argument about concerns about use of money for things like the wage subsidy, right? But I view that as a temporary program in a unique circumstance. People support that subsidy to preserve jobs. And when they see that businesses are throwing it in the bank or giving out special dividends to shareholders, it's a problem. I would say one thing that governments can do that's relatively simple that doesn't give rise to the same problem I've just mentioned is transparency. I think if the price of admission for support for private entities is there must be full disclosure of the terms of a contract, repayment. It's been endlessly frustrating. I recognize we take a very hard line on subsidy, but I think that if governments decide they are going to support business for whatever reason, the bare minimum expectation for taxpayers is they should be able to see where the money goes, when it gets paid back, whether the contract is fulfilled.
Don't you think, though, when we look at the auto sector bailout, that the equity positions that the government took were much more beneficial to the taxpayer and the public interest than the loans that ultimately were never repaid?
Well, we lost 3.7 billion on that transaction, so I would argue it wasn't exactly a. Look, I understand the political pressure, I understand the calculation, but if you look at we put out a study on this. If you look at the dollars and cents, taxpayers lost money on that transaction, and I know that there were groups agitating for continued equity stake, but as I said, there's a reason that most businesses are not in permanent partnership with government.
But I'm not. But just to pause, I'm not suggesting permanent partnership, right?
Sure.
So I don't think Germany and taking a 20% stake in Lufthansa is suggesting they're going to be an unending partner with that particular company. But in a crisis, when you talked about sort of a grim necessity, how do we as decision makers in the public interest ensure that the public interest is protected and that, in your case, that taxpayers are protected? And wouldn't you think that, at least this professor's writing, that the public interest is better protected by government having a serious stake and seat at the table?
Yeah, I think the public interest is better protected when there is a consequence or that the government has some form of stake. You're proposing an equity stake. I propose things like transparency or other looser strings that don't involve an equity stake, but definitely better than a no strings attached approach. I'd agree with that.
And Mr. Donald, I don't know if you have a view on this. I would also be interested, with the remaining time that I have, which is only a minute or so, that you expand a little bit on what Transport Canada can do in a non-monetary way to ensure that the colleges are better equipped to deliver on for the labor needs of the industry. Because it strikes me that you suggest convening various partners, but maybe lay out a few concrete steps that you think Transport Canada should take to free up some unnecessary red tape that potentially stands in the way of colleges delivering on the labor market that we need.
Thank you for the question. The first is updating the required curricula that colleges must teach. As I say, at the moment, they require colleges to teach how to fix cloth wings. I don't think that's of much use to WestJet or Air Canada or some of the majors. They're requiring to teach how to fix components that are no longer installed on aircraft. So they need to do that. They need to make the commitment to online blended learning permanent and to tell the colleges now so that they can take the necessary steps to invest for the future. They told them on less than 2 months' notice that they could go to blended. What do you expect colleges to do? Telling them now in November that, okay, it's going to be extended again. They need to plan a little bit better and elaborate. And the same thing with industry, bluntly. They need to tell industry so that Tracy and others can prepare. Government needs to set out a plan subject to what are the parameters for getting rid of quarantine on international so that people can start gauging the capacity they're going to need. Bringing staff back, bringing aircraft back.
My apologies.
Sorry.
I'm waving over here.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Mr. Donald.
Thanks so much. Our next round of questions goes to Monsieur Sévard Tremblay. Vous avez la parole pour 6 minutes.
Alors, bonjour.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to our witnesses and colleagues. Mr. Woodwick of the Taxpayers Federation asked why we would support this industry in particular. In the case of Quebec, it's 40,000 direct, 100,000 indirect, 220 small and medium business, 18 billion in sales, 80% for exports, number one exporter for Quebec. And let's remember, it's the third most important aerospace hub. There's only a very few parts in the world where you can find suppliers to provide all of the components to manufacture a plane for A to Z. And Greater Montreal is one of these hubs. Just for that region, it is a strategic industry that is worthwhile safeguarding. In the midst of COVID, we know that some sectors are going to be affected more and longer than other sectors. They're going to need specific assistance for all sorts of reasons, canceled flights, grounded planes, no maintenance, no spare parts, and there were thousands of jobs lost. So the industry is having to even loan some of its workers to the construction industry because they don't want to risk them losing their expertise. They're small and businesses that are extremely concerned. Everywhere in the world, we see that the planet as a whole is getting ready for the next generation of aircraft, and we know that we need a comprehensive policy that needs to be developed now to enable our industry to be at the cutting edge in the future. So an aerospatial policy, of course, I agree. It cannot just be financial assistance. It needs a consultation where all stakeholders contribute, and a policy needs to be adapted. It needs to be comprehensive and include loans for purchasers, financial assistance for R&D. So if you examine the entire picture, it is a strategic industry and is as important for Quebec as the automobile industry is for Ontario or oil for Western Canada. So question for Mr. Woodrick from the Taxpayers Federation. If you're not to support the aerospatial industry, should we stop financial assistance to the automobile and the oil industries?
Yes, absolutely. That's been our position all along. We take the exact same position. I want to be clear, it's not picking on a particular region. We take the identical view to every industry. That includes auto and that includes oil. And I recognize that some people consider that an extreme position. Look, I don't want to diminish the importance to a particular region. I hear similar arguments made by other industries. My concern is the focus on the size is undercut by the cost of support. You mentioned the additional jobs and the spinoff. I hear this argument all the time. The reality is that, to take Bombardier as the most obvious example, support for Bombardier has often been justified on the basis that it supports the supply chain. But the supply chain is also subsidized. Research and development is also subsidized. Purchases of the sale of the aircraft are also subsidized. So this is not a case of subsidizing at the top and it trickles down and supports all these other elements. Everything along the chain is subsidized. And all I am asking is that when we are going to do a cost-benefit analysis, we also count the cost. Yeah, I'm fine with counting the benefit, but I think it's only fair for every industry that we count the cost as well when we're making a judgment about what support should or shouldn't be offered. I agree with your point, and some of the other people on the panel. I recognize I've been focusing on subsidies. There are many other ways to support the industry, and I have no issue with a lot of those things, and those things need to be discussed. I'm really solely focused on the issue of direct transfers of taxpayer money in the form of grants, not loans. If loans are repaid, I think that there's an argument there as well with proper disclosure. But I'm really just focusing on the subsidy issue.
So if I can sum up, no support for aerospatial, but you are talking about direct support, but none either for oil or the automobile sectors. Fine. But would an equity assistance policy be something that would be envisageable, in your opinion?
It would be better than getting nothing in return, but I'm very worried, again, about the auto bailout example. Taxpayers lost a lot of money on that deal. So I recognize that there is an immediate benefit in terms of keeping those companies afloat, but there was a cost. We need to be honest about the fact there was a cost. It was not a ideal scenario. So if you're asking me, are there ways to structure things where it's less bad for taxpayers? Yes. And any way in which taxpayers get repaid or protected in terms of what the money they're forced to subsidize an entity with is preferable to none at all.
But you gave the example of an agreement with Bombardier. So is the problem with that agreement not the fact that there were no conditions, for instance, regarding the head office or for cutting jobs or forbidding the increase in compensation for executive officers? Chair, I apologize. I may have run out of time. Not at all. You have 10 more seconds. So I asked my question.
Mr. Woodrick, if you could answer quickly.
Yeah, I think there are bigger problems that go back a lot further than that, but that was definitely something that I think drew a lot of negative attention towards it, rightly so.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next round of questions goes to MP Garrison. Welcome back to INDU.
Thanks very much. I'll try to remember I'm in the industry committee and not the defense committee, although with aerospace, of course, as I've said before in this committee, there's a very direct connection between maintaining capacity in the aerospace industry and Canadian sovereignty. But I'm going to talk about some more personal things today. First of all, I should confess that my father was a pilot and air traffic controller, so I've always been interested in this industry. And secondly, I spent 20 years teaching in a college before I became a member of parliament. And so I'm particularly interested in Mr. Donald's comments on the labor force problems that are presented both during the pandemic and losses during the pandemic, and also the future needs in the industry. I wonder whether he could tell me a bit more about, is it a two-faceted problem? We have not enough people wanting to go into the industry combined with not enough capacity, or is it simply a capacity problem?
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. It's a little of both. I think we're getting more interest in people coming into the industry, but capacity is a huge issue. As a practical matter, as I said, in 2018, we were Canadian colleges with wait lists were only graduating 25% of the students we needed. And that's getting worse, not better. So I have, as I say, if we're going to rely simply on colleges, governments have to fund a massive expansion of that. I don't think that's realistic. So I think bluntly, we need to look at new ways of training that don't require 5 days a week, full time at a brick and mortar institution. I think Transport Canada has to recognize other ways of training that are recognized and expand our capacity.
I think those are very useful suggestions, and I hope that when it comes to writing a report, the committee will keep those in mind. What about attracting the, I guess I would say, non-traditional employees into the industry? And I'm not just talking here about women, but about perhaps new Canadians, racialized Canadians, and Indigenous Canadians. Does the program that ESDC runs now actually reach out to non-traditional participants in the industry to try and encourage participation?
Yes, we have a number of programs that are directed at north of 60, trying to encourage students to join the industry. As I alluded to in my opening remarks, one of the problems is that if you take students from the north, there are no training facilities up there. And so that means Indigenous people have to come south to Winnipeg or otherwise for 2 years. And there's a whole variety of reasons people have studied, but the success rate is not good. We are working to get ambassadors, and we're trying right now at the moment with partners in the north to get entry-level positions in the north where we can train them in the north, et cetera. So ESDC is assisting in that way. We did a massive project with them on how can we attract more women to the industry, how can we attract more Indigenous. We conducted focus groups across the country. Now we're bluntly applying for funding to try and put some of those into action. Does that answer your question, Mr. Garrison?
Yes, I think it does very directly. I want to turn to Ms. Medvey to talk maybe in more practical sense about the impact of skill loss during COVID on her company, which I know quite a bit about because we spend a lot of time as a family in Kelowna. So I know that you talked about losses and the difficulties of getting people back after COVID. So can you tell us a bit more about the scope of that problem, Ms. Medvey?
Well, we very specifically made the decision. Our problem wasn't really the loss of skilled workers, it was the loss of customers because our carriers are on the ground, they're not generating any revenue, and they can't pay for maintenance. So we took a very deliberate decision, as much as we possibly could, to keep our workers working throughout the whole pandemic. We had some of our own aircraft that we converted. We did cargo conversions on them. So we were able to keep people working. We were able to keep them doing the work that they normally do. We continued to we took the opportunity to do a lot of training. And so, our company, because we knew once things started to come out of, the lockdown, carriers were going to be back massively and very quickly wanting their airplanes maintained. So I think we've done a good job of hanging on to our staff. The problem is we were suffering shortages before COVID hit, and that goes back to what Mr. Donald was saying about not having enough colleges, enough people going through the colleges, not enough graduates, and interestingly enough, during COVID, Transport Canada has loosened the requirements for training to say, yes, you can do classroom training. So, it's, I guess, one of those silver linings where presumably if it was okay this past year, it's going to be okay for the future, and that will help a great deal. And it will also help a great deal in attracting, say, women to this industry so that they can train in their home locations. They can train at home. They can have flexibility in the time that they're training during the day so that they can look after their kids, all those kinds of things.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I realize there's very little time there, so I'll let you go to the next questioner.
Thank you very much. So we'll start our second round of questions. Our first round of questions goes to Député Généreux. Vous avez la parole pour 5 minutes.
Merci. Thank you very much, Chair. First question for Mr. Arthur of Boeing Canada. We know that WestJet cancelled an order of 15 planes in recent weeks, and that affects your company. The consequences of the pandemic have been direct on your company, but what are the consequences, the Canadian consequences of that decision?
Thank you, Mr. Jennifer. If I've understood your question, it's about the recent order for MAX, the WestJet, and the MAX is now back flying. Thank you to Transport Canada for having reauthorized that. The impact on Canada. Now, these are planes made in the United States, but the traffic is in Canada. So I wasn't quite clear where your question was on the impact in Canada. These are the most fuel efficient planes we sell. 25% more efficient than the planes that they replace across the board. And so in terms of sustainability, this is the state-of-the-art offering that we have. Does that answer your question, Mr. Jennifer?
Oui, absolument.
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Woodrick, earlier, you really made a significant statement saying that most witnesses had come to contribute to the study. We're trying to save their jobs. I wonder if there isn't a balance to be found between the sums that Canadian government can make available to the aerospatial industry as a whole, as compared to, safeguarding jobs, keeping high-paid jobs, and what taxpayers are contributing to these benefits, which is the case for other industries as well. There was reference earlier to the automobile sector and the oil sector. Am I to understand from you that we should no longer subsidize anything in Canada?
Yeah, you would understand correctly. That's our position. And I recognize a lot of people take that to be an extreme position. But I think that the onus really needs to be reversed. We're sort of arriving at a point in this country. And, I spend a lot of time in Ottawa around a lot of lobbyists and a lot of industries. And their marching orders are to see what's on offer from government. Their marching orders are to see what is the government prepared to give them. And I think that's just a very unhealthy business climate for any country to be cultivating. So I'm not an advocate of making the perfect the enemy of the good. So I recognize it's not going to be snap your fingers and nobody gets any subsidies. But I just want to always put out there that there are ways to help business that don't involve direct taxpayer support. And I am alarmed that in some cases, a lot of groups and individuals just seem to assume that what we need to do anytime there's a problem with a business or an industry is to run to the rescue with a bucket of taxpayer money. And I think that should be an instinct that we need to check.
Donc, si je comprends bien.
So if I've understood, in spite of everything, you would be in favor of a national strategy that would support the industry and to find solutions to supporting the industry, because you yourself said we live in, a very competitive world. And if all countries were to continue to support their industry, Germany or other G7 countries continue to support the industry by hundreds of millions, and we did nothing in Canada, we would lose any kind of competitive edge compared to others around the world.
Well, first of all, I want to be clear. I'm a big supporter of the marketplace and business, and I wish all the best to any business in any industry that can do well in the marketplace. I'm not anti-business by any stretch of the imagination. Your point about the reality of the global marketplace, I acknowledge that, but I also point out we'll have to pick and choose who we support. We cannot support every industry that goes up against global competitors that are subsidized. So that in itself is a choice. We are not going to be able to subsidize every business in every industry to survive against global competition that's also subsidized.
Alors, comment vous faites le choix?
So how would you make the choice?
Well, if you're going to, that's for the politicians to make, but you have to recognize that it is a choice and that you are essentially going to be saying to the public, some industries and some jobs are more important than others. And how is that going to reflect, how are people who are not in those industries going to receive that kind of news?
OK, alors, si j'écoute votre...
All right, I listened to you, and you're saying, that gas for cars is more important than the aerospatial. So you're giving the Bloc arguments that we'll never have a majority government in Canada.
Subsidies to any business,
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Our next round of questions will go to MP Jasik. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. This has been a very interesting discussion this morning. I'm also on the Transport Committee, and so I've heard a great deal about the devastation, clearly, that COVID-19 has had on the aviation sector as well as the aerospace industry. But as Mr. Donald has told us very clearly, we're looking at a dramatic resurgence, no doubt, of the need for airplanes and flights and people. There's a certain pent-up demand clearly that will occur. I was particularly struck by Ms. Medvi's investment in the training facility that she told us about in Hamilton, because a sort of a vertical integration of her business. So obviously having those maintenance workers available to grow her business. And I'm wondering if Boeing has similarly invested in training of any particular sector in the aerospace industry. So whether it's Michael or maybe I would really be interested in any investment in Canada. So maybe Mr. Sullivan, would either of you please tell us about your investments in training specifically?
Well, thank you. Let me just go first, and perhaps after that, come in as well.
Sir Arthur, if you could put your microphone a little closer to your mouth, please.
Is that easier? I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, two things I would say. First, we have partnerships with 7 different Canadian universities where we do a bit of research, but we also invest for recruitment purposes. And if you look at what I was mentioning earlier in Vancouver and the cluster work we've got there, I mean, that workforce there comes out of Canadian universities with a very close association with us. So that's not sort of training pilots in the conventional sense, but it's part of our workforce development. The second point I would make, and it's tangential, but and this is back to the subsidies issue, which I don't want to enter into that, but if the customer is the government, and for example, we are campaigning on the defense side for your future fighter, and the customer is the taxpayer, is the government. If that goes through, Doily Tech Corporation have calculated that there are, over a 40-year period, 250,000 jobs that will be created as a sort of follow-on to that. Well, necessarily, as we develop all that, we will have to be a part of the sort of training of the workforce that we bring on. So yes is the basic answer. We do take training of our workforce very seriously, but we don't actually have a pilot training school in Canada.
But do you, if you could just clarify on the partnership issue, do you actually flow funds for these training opportunities from Boeing?
They tend to be more research than as well as student scholarship type funds, basically.
Would you consider any movement in the direction such as Ms. Medvi has made for her business?
Yes, quite possibly. I mean, I think, as I say, the growing workforce that we're going to need in Canada is something we have to take very seriously, assuming the business develops as the way I've described. And we are talking about new skills in the industry. And so I absolutely take that away. Let us see if we can respond to you a bit.
I think Mr. Lyons has something to say.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? I would just add to what Sir Michael said that our composites network, knowledge network based around UBC is actually producing knowledge process documents for 200 plus SMEs and counting. So the the training that we do, that research translates into action for not just our immediate members, but also the SMEs that are part of the CRN, as we call it, the Composites Research Network.
Thank you very much. I think we were all very impressed with some of the arguments made by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation at looking at what we can do without direct subsidy. And so, Mr. Hamilton from Hexagon, you mentioned that you felt that we needed clear export controls. And I'm wondering if you could clarify, elaborate a little bit on exactly what you mean and what kind of recommendation you're making.
Sure. Let me begin by saying I'm not advocating for different export policy. I think it's up to the politicians to decide where we export. What exporters need, and we export about 90% of what we manufacture in Canada, we need clear guidelines and partnership with government agencies to help us export. If we have to wait 3, 6, 9, sometimes 12 months to understand if we can deliver a product to a customer, we're not competitive. Those customers will go elsewhere and they have options. And that maybe it's a slowdown from COVID, but it is a slowdown we saw even before COVID started.
Thank you very much.
Our next turn is MP Lemire. You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for Mr. Orlik for Rheinmetall Canada. Thank you for attending and explaining to us the importance of the defense industry and the attention you've put to the policy on the economic benefits. And you talk about the list of the requirements that Canada supports. And I believe there can be impacts on the supply chains and the quality jobs in the industry. Could you comment? Thank you, Mr. Lemire. We understand that with the ITB policy, there are opportunities for some industries, some benefit, but our understanding is that in 2017, the Canadian government mandated a company called Abasant to drop a list of the key industries existing in Canada that could be supported. I think the list contained 58 different industrial capabilities. So there, of those 58, 16 were chosen for the current policy. Now, we believe that certain companies that are not recognized in this policy should be so. The policy should be broadened so that it would have a positive impact. Thank you. Aside from the industrial and technological benefits policy, is there any other Canadian policy that undermines your positioning regarding the defense procurement contracts? A Canadian tender will include, many requirements. The ITB is important, but there's also a direct tie-in with exports. In the current policy, exports is favored. You can get points but if the regulations don't follow through, on the one hand, there's encouragement to export, but on the other hand, with the implementation of export permits, there's constraints. That's not helpful. And just as my colleague said earlier, it's not a question of questioning the worthiness of export permits. We agree with that, but we've also seen delays 4 or 5-fold long. And this starting even before COVID, so you lose your clients. So there's a direct, relevant connection there. Thank you.
Garrison, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I hope the arrival of the recycling truck outside my house will not interrupt the questions that I have and the time remaining. I found the comments on industrial technological benefits from a couple of presenters very interesting. So I'd like to go to Sir Michael Arthur and ask him to expand a bit on what he said about the 100% benefits and the contract value question?
I mean, the Canadian government requires that we reinvest up to 100%, and I think it's 11 billion over the past history. I mean, 8.8 or 9 billion of that has already been done. So we've set that aside. I mean, we've fulfilled our obligations, and we're in work for the remaining 1.8 billion that's left. So we invest in things happening in Canada, industrial investment. If you want some exact examples, perhaps we can send you some of those after, so we know where we spent the money. If you like it.
And I guess my concern about it is that without those kind of industrial benefits, large investments we make, and again, I'm back to Defense Committee, and things like fighter jets don't help us maintain the aerospace industry in Canada. And so that's really my interest in the importance of these agreements.
Yes, well, actually, if I, with respect to differ on that, I mean, if we see for example, the Super Hornet campaign going forward, I mean, if we were to be successful in that, we would do a huge amount of investment in Canada in the sustainment of the whole project going forward, and we haven't yet worked out which suppliers we would work with, but I'm quite confident there will be a wide range of Canadian supplier companies that we will be working with in the implementation of such a contract. So definitely keeping sustainment to the aerospace industry in Canada, across Canada. We have 500 suppliers already in Canada,
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Orley, I believe you also had some comments, and that give just a brief response on the same question.
Look, our point is that we should not allow overcommitment. Today, the policy has been changed slightly in the 2.0, which allows actually overcommitments by companies, and that basically means that if you take an obligation of $1, maybe the company decides to invest $1.2. This appears in the short term as being a very good and encouraging for the industry, but actually it weakens the competition in the long term. And our point is that there should be capped, because otherwise it's quite similar to a dumping practice.
Thank you very much.
You.
Our next round of questions goes to MP Dreeshen. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of the witnesses. So far this morning, we've talked about subsidies, we've talked about training. I'd like to focus on regulations and red tape. And so some of the questions that I'm going to ask, if the presenters could perhaps kind of make sure that we're sort of dealing with that aspect and how that affects them. We know from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business that regulations cost Canadian businesses about $30 billion each year in compliance costs alone. And small businesses are the ones that feel the brunt of that. And we've just heard, the delays make you lose clients. And this is one of the critical aspects that we have. So I'm wondering, and I'll start first with Mr. Hamilton. As far as GPS technology is concerned, you spoke as well about spectrum disruption, hacking as far as GPS signals are concerned, and innovation. Are there particular regulations and red tape that you could see that would help your side of the industry?
So we talked a little bit about export. I think I've said what I needed to say on that front. We need a partner in government to help us export and be leaders in this worldwide, and be quick and agile in our export policy and processes to let us do that. On the other side, opening up of the airspace, I guess we're looking for more regulation and more guidance on interoperability of unmanned and manned aircraft. And the more guidance we can give industry on the timeline for that, for opening of those opportunities, the more we'll attract investment in all of the technologies required for autonomy into Canada. So that's I think not reducing regulation, but providing a regulatory framework that gives certainty to industry so they can invest in future technologies.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Medvi, when you were giving your presentation, one of the things you spoke of was being able to maintain maintenance in Canada, and that there seemed to be some impediments that were of concern to you. Could you discuss what those impediments are? Are there things again in regulations and red tape that could be eliminated in order to make it easier for you and people within your part of the industry to compete?
Well, given we're time restricted, I'll just focus on the one that we're having the most immediate problem with, and that is when we have out of country customers having heavy maintenance on their aircraft, they want to send a technical representative to be with the airplane throughout that check, and that can last several weeks. And we were able to get so pilots can come and go in and out of the country with relative ease. But now suddenly the maintenance technicians that are coming to sit with their airplanes and walk them through this major check with us are now being impeded. And we've had, I've had our HR person on the phone for hours to Ottawa, to the local, trying to find somebody who will let this person into the country who's here. We're declared an essential service, but we can't do our work if these technicians can't come into the country and sit with their airplanes while they go through maintenance. And that should be a relatively easy thing to solve.
Well, hopefully they have heard that today. Are there other red tape issues, though, that you are concerned about as far as your actual work in maintenance is concerned?
Not really red tape. I mean, we're used to living in a regulated industry. Part of my comment was, I think, to also just get you to recognize that when we talk about this industry, we're not just talking about the airlines. We are talking about all the back end providers that support that industry. And we, as an MRO provider, we often really feel like we're sort of forgotten and nobody really understands how it is that these airplanes can fly around safely. It's because we have this cadre of people that are there working on the airplanes. So sometimes the policymaking really stops at the carrier's door. And we think, carriers like Air Canada should come to Canadian MRO providers first. That was the point that I was trying to make there.
Okay, and I realize I don't have very much time left. I just wanted to make the comment, though, to Mr. Orley. You had 4 recommendations that you said were simple. They do need a little bit of explanation, though, because they're not easy to understand. But certainly appreciate a chance for you to present that to the committee so that we can have something that we can work on during our report. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And perhaps, Mr. Orly, you could prepare a briefing on those 4 points and send it to the clerk so he could circulate it amongst the committee. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Our next round goes to MP Johari. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. It was quite informative. Once again, I'm going to go back to Mr. Donald and Madam Madva, and hopefully I'll bring everyone else into this conversation. As I was listening, it was quite clear that the lack of training capacity as well as retention is an issue that the industry as a whole is dealing with. While I was listening, I also noticed that if you look at the landscape of, who are we working with to address this issue, we have the government, which is, providing funding and incentive, also providing regulations through Transport Canada. We have the industry who's doing the R&D and is doing some training opportunities as well as providing the, through the extended supply chain, they're providing the jobs. We have the labor skill group here, representative for the council, and they're doing a great job on advocating on behalf of their members. And we have the probably the educational institutions are missing, and also the airlines. But when you look at all these stakeholders, whether it's government, industry, labor, skill, advocacy group, educational institution, as airlines, my question to the group, and I start with again Mr. Donald and then Madam Meddev, and go back to the rest, is what can we do as part of a partnership model to be able to address the issue of the training capacity as well as the retention? I'll start with Mr. Donald.
Thank you, Mr. Dwarhari. And I'll digress for just a sec. As I alluded to a little bit earlier, I think the most useful thing that the government could do right now is lay out a roadmap with industry. And this isn't for public consumption, but sitting down with the airlines, the MROs, manufacturers, and laying out a roadmap for the reopening of our industry. And I don't know what conversations have gone on with Air Canada and WestJet and others, but the more they understand what's going to be required to lift quarantine restrictions, et cetera, I think they can then turn to Tracy, KF Aerospace, and others, and start planning how they're going to bring back their workforce, how they're going to bring back their airlines. I think that would be the most useful thing that could be done.
But how does that address the lack of or inability to be able to build the capacity for the training? Wouldn't the training be mainly between the institutions as well as the partnership with the industry, and probably your council to build that capacity that it's right now in shortage?
As I say, I apologize for the digression. I just wanted to make that point. But in terms of increasing capacity, I think what we have to move to is more workplace integrated learning, continuous workplace integrated learning using new tools, virtual reality, online, blended, so that industry can put in place their own training programs that aren't dependent on Transport Canada approved colleges. I think that's a necessary conclusion that we don't have the capacity. I don't believe governments will fund the increased capacity. So I think we have to turn to industry and provide them with the tools to allow them to train their own workforce, micro-credentialing, online learning, those types of tools that frankly our council is working on and developing with the SDC. But we need recognition by Transport Canada to do that.
Okay, so from Transport Canada point of view, you need updating of the regulation, and then reviewing the new training approach and basically approving it.
Correct, and moving to competency-based learning instead of hours-based. If a student finishes a 3-hour project in class in an hour, that student has to sit there for 2 hours doing nothing because the teacher has to recognize the 3 hours. Competency-based, new rules.
Yeah. With about 30 seconds to go,
I apologize.
No, that's okay, because I'm trying to bring it back to the industry and say, what type of commitment do you need from the industry, from the extended, what I call the extended value chain or the extended supply chain, in support of those type of trainings?
Hopefully industry will come on board, and we have a number of companies, including KF, who have come on board to say, yes, they're willing to work on developing continuous workplace learning training. So hopefully if we can get a good pilot project going and industry picks up on it and transport approves it, we will increase our capacity without increasing the spend by government.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll start our third round of questions. The first round goes to MP Polyev. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. My question is for Mr. Woodrick.
As my apologies, MP Polyev, do you have your headset?
I do not.
Okay, could you get closer to the mic, please? And I'll restart the clock.
Yes. Can you hear me now, Madam Chair?
One moment. I'm just checking with the interpretation services. I'll hold the clock. One moment.
La traduction se fait bien, Madame la Présidente.
Oui?
Oui.
D'accord. Merci.
Je suis quand même surpris par.
The translation is coming through, but I'm curious. The MP Polièvre wants to pose his question. I'm sorry to surprise you, my dear friend Sébastien.
Mr. Woodrick, I just want to talk to you about a challenge in public finance in general. Whenever we have these hearings on any subject, we get 20 or 30 witnesses showing up asking for more money. And we get one witness, usually you or someone like you, representing the 30+ million Canadians who have to pay for it. So the 30 million plus Canadians who pay the price of programs get one witness, and the comparatively very small group, sometimes representing 10 or 20,000 people, get 20 or 30 witnesses. And it's not just this committee, it's every committee. In fact, it was even worse on the Finance Committee. It reminds me of John Buchanan, who was a Nobel Prize winning economist who invented something called public choice theory, where he pointed out that when governments start to run the economy, the theory is that everything's going to happen in the public interest, but in fact, people seeking profit just do so through the government rather than through the marketplace. And so they show up at committees like this one advocating for their interest group to get a bigger handout from the many millions of people who are too busy working and living their lives to lobby in the other direction. And in the end, the concentrated benefit of a government handout is far more politically powerful than the dispersed cost that everyone must contribute to pay for it. Hence, we have one witness defending the payers. Here, that's you. And throughout this study, we'll have 25 or 30 advocating for more spending. Do you have any suggestions on how we can redress this balance so that the people who pay the bills in this country, the working class folks who put in the hours and earn their wages, and the small business people across the land are not continuously outnumbered by those who want to draw from their pockets?
Well, the first thing I say is you should invite the Canadian Taxpayers Federation to committee more often. But aside from that, I think it's incumbent on the members on the committee and all members of Parliament to remember that fact, to remember that, and I don't want to take anything away from the people who appear at committee. You're all dedicated to your craft, and I'm sure all your reasoning is in earnest, and you believe in what you're saying. But there, as you say, Mr. Polliver, there are millions of Canadians who will never appear before committee. And it's incumbent upon members of Parliament to remember that it should not always be the squeaky wheel that gets the oil.
Right. No, you're right. And just pour le répéter en français.
I could repeat in French for Mr. Lemire. Always during sessions such as these, there's 20 or 30 witnesses who want more money. And there are 30 million Canadians or more who have to pay the bill. But those 30 million persons have only one witness come to committee when the small group wants another subsidy or another government grant and represented by some 20 or 30 well-paid lobbyists. It is a problem where these organizations in the industry are much better organized than citizens who are busy with their day jobs. But the corporations that are seeking money are well organized and can afford to hire lobbyists to work on their behalf. So that's not a good balance, and I would like to hear Mr. Woodruff's suggestions on how we could rebalance that lack of equilibrium between those who are always asking for more money as opposed to citizens who are far more numerous but who end up needing to pay the bill.
As I said, invite us to committee more often and maybe speak more often to your constituents and see how they feel about some of these proposals.
Good suggestion. And I want to go to Mr. Donald, who I think also made a very good suggestion. He's saying, let's go to competency-based credentials. What can you do rather than just hours-based credentials? And I want to ask you, Mr. Donald, do you think this is a principle that could be extended? Because we have very qualified immigrants who come to this country.
MP Poliev, MP Poliev, you're out of time. Could you quickly wrap it up?
I'll wrap it up. We have very qualified immigrants and military veterans who have a whole series of qualifications that don't get recognized, even though they are qualified, because they don't have the finances or the time to redo all of their training and get a permit to work in a given profession or trade. Do you think we could extend your principle of competency-based credentials to those types of situations as well?
Absolutely.
Very, very quickly. Thank you.
Absolutely. And you can have a AME, an engineer from Lufthansa who's been working there for 20 years on an Air Canada aircraft, come to Canada, and his credentials aren't recognized by Transport Canada because they can't validate what he studied, not his competency, but what he studied 20 years ago in Berlin. I
Thank
agree
you
with
very
you
much.
completely, Mr.
Fix
Poilievre.
that. Let's fix
Thank
that.
you.
Agreed.
Our next round of questions goes to MP Lambropoulos. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to thank all of the witnesses who have attended today to answer our questions.
Is one that's been through a lot during this pandemic. It has been quite hard hit, but rather than focusing on COVID-19 and what the current state of affairs is, I'd like to focus more on the future and see how the government could support the industry in the long term. I represent a riding where quite a bit of the aerospace industry is on the territory of Saint Laurent, so it's an industry that I hear a lot from. At the same time, I also hear a lot from my constituents when I go door to door, and I've heard in the past about bailouts and about how people aren't necessarily happy about the way that sometimes money gets thrown at these companies. So I'm all for supporting the industry, of course. I think that the aerospace industry is a strategic one where if we invest properly or if we, support it in the right ways, it can definitely allow us to be competitive on a global scale. It's the future. I'm looking for ways other than bailouts, ways that you guys would recommend, and I'm really speaking to all of the panelists here, that the government could help find ways to support. So I'm thinking more in terms of contracts and preferring Canadian companies, for example, over global competitors. I'm thinking education and ways in which we can help improve the industry and make sure that we're up to par with global competitors so that Canadian companies are the ones that we want to choose. If anybody wants to comment on ways forward that go along with that way of thinking, I'm really interested in hearing your suggestions.
Can I just comment on that? It's near and dear to my heart, and I ran out of time before I could say 17 times buy Canadian. And don't be fooled by the ITB structure because it's a zero-sum game. If you have a Canadian provider, like we do, providing with a full Canadian team, military pilot training, which we've been doing in the country since since 1940, giving that work to a foreign competitor and then requiring them to meet these ITB commitments is a zero-sum game. All you're doing is taking it away from a Canadian company that's using Canadian companies to do the work and giving it to a foreign company to then require them to hire all the people that you just lost to this company. Don't get sucked into that. That's all I have to say about that. It's just a simple argument. I'll let someone else talk.
Does anyone else?
It's Michael Arthur here. If I could just come in from Boeing. I mean, there's the only foreign company here in the panel. I mean, I do think two things. First, the last thing we're asking for is bailouts from government, and that we're here on a competitive basis. But as I said in my earlier remarks, I mean, if we win a government contract on the defence side, there's a huge economic benefit to the Canadian economy. I mean, it wasn't us; it was an outside company, Dollytech, who calculated that over 40 years, there's 60 billion Canadian dollars worth of value into the Canadian economy. I mean, that's because these global companies that you mentioned just now, like us, we bring with us a lot of Canadian industry. We work within Canadian industry the whole time. We have 500 suppliers across the country. So it's a sort of integrated package you get. That's the point I would make from outside.
Thank you very much. You both make valid points. I think, obviously we can, if we were to find ways to incorporate the two and to make sure that Canadian companies were benefiting from the expertise that others may have, and so that we can eventually have companies that are able to do pretty much the same thing, I think that would be the best way to go. I don't have any other questions, but if anyone else would like to jump in that hasn't already, you're able to. Mr. Lyons?
Yes,
Could I just make one? Oh, sorry, Bill, you go first. I'll make one extra point.
Please, Michael, you go first.
I was just going to give another actually nice example. There's a company called Tech, which makes landing gear. Is one of the world's best landing gear suppliers. And if I'm right, it's in the riding of Madam Chairman. I mean, there's a very good example of how when a 737 lands in Canada, Tech has helped it land.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, you're out of time. Perhaps at the next round of questions. Our next round of questions goes to Monsieur Lemire. Vous avez la parole pour 2 minutes et demie.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to begin by answering my colleague Polyev, who says we're not asking more than we'll be more than 8 million funding the investments in our aerospatial industry rather than do business with a government that doesn't choose to invest, one of which we pay half of our taxes and imposes foreign policies. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Orlik because I think he too wanted to react to Mr. Poilievre's comments. Thank you, Mr. Lemire. I will answer in English. I just want to be sure that my message gets through.
That we actually not asking for government money. We're asking for fair rules and enhanced competition. And it's a very highly technical subject, the subject of value proposition and ITBs. And we have a chance to present our recommendations for consideration. In no ways are those more money. It is tweaking of regulations for an enhanced competition and for fair rules.
Mr. Orlik, so you're talking about bidding for tendering for the procurement of defense. When you are a business, you have to be very careful with the investments you make. And there's some, subsidies that can distort calculations. But if you're encouraged by the government or forced by the government to submit an offer and then invest more money that you get in return, that's a very bad business practice. And over time, you'll end up in a precarious financial situation and you'll no longer be able to invest in innovative technology nor participate in future tenders. So if the rules enable those kinds of mechanisms, we believe that the economic fabric will be weakened long term. So we want a 1-for-1 ratio. Otherwise, it's bad business. Thank you. I'll take the last 10 seconds I have to thank Mr. Donald and Ms. Medvedev in particular for having put the emphasis on INE and the importance of that for economic development. Thank you.
Cool. Our next round of questions goes to MP Garrison. You have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's always nice to be present in committee for another chapter in the bromance between Mr. Polyev and the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. But I would just like to differ briefly at the beginning in my riding, where CFB Esquimalt and the shipyards are the biggest employers in my riding. I think that the taxpayers in my riding would completely differ. What we're looking for here is not necessarily subsidies or government spending, but ways to grow the aerospace industry in ways that will create those good jobs. I'm afraid that Mr. Polyev and the representative of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation won't be happy until we'll all hewers of wood, drawers of water, and workers in Amazon warehouses. So not that I disrespect any of those jobs, but Canadians are looking for skilled work, and the aerospace industry is a good source of that. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Donald and maybe Ms. Bedby to talk about the overall contributions to aerospace to the Canadian economy, because I think we've lost sight of that today.
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. I believe you had Mike Mueller from AIEC before you last week, and he would have gone through that, the hundreds of thousands of jobs, and I think it's $90 billion contributed to GDP, the vast majority exported. That's not really what we focus on. It's the labor force. So I'll let Tracy speak to that.
Yeah, I did talk about Canada being a large company. We suffer from a lot of geography and not very many people, and we need aerospace and aviation just to get by every day. So that sort of goes without saying. And I guess my point, that was making before is I haven't come here asking for subsidies, and I don't want it represented that that's what I was doing. I'm just saying, please recognize in your policy making that we go beyond just the air carriers in this industry. I think also I'm trying to make the point that where we already have Canadian capability, like in pilot training, military pilot training, do not give that work to companies outside Canada because we're already really good at it. So I know the time's up. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you very much, Ms. Medley.
Our next round of questions will go to MP Baldinelli. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, thanks to the witnesses. I just want to follow up on some of the questioning, and it's things that government can do to foster and spur investments on the aerospace industry side. I mean, reading in some of our briefing materials that R&D investment has actually gone down over the past 5 years, and then listening to Sir Arthur talk about the innovative research hub in Vancouver and the 200 jobs there. So what is it that government can do in setting a climate to encourage research and development investments in Canada, and what role can it play in any needed recovery that we're doing?
I'm starting. May I ask Bill Lyons to come in on that one, because he's our global head of research technology placement and works with governments and universities all the time. So he's the real expert on that. Bill, do you want to pick it up?
Yes, thank you, Michael. So I think the first thing is, have a policy around what is the national priorities. And one of the things that I see around the globe is where government have really well-defined policies around where they wish to be, have areas of comparative advantage, and then secondly, create that climate for women and girls and value diversity of all forms for people to get involved very early in education. Aerospace is not just about and it's not just about building airplanes. There's a whole raft of industries that connect with aerospace that we really need to try and make just interesting for people, but just to connect people. Aerospace for me is one of those things that really connects to that higher human purpose, to kind of know our world, understand our place in the universe, and to connect and trade with others. And you can make a difference in technologies, make a difference in all sorts of ways. And one of the ones that I kind of look at is I come from obviously not the United States and not from Canada, but I look at how access to space, like remote sensing technologies, of which Canada excels in, makes a difference. When I lived in Australia, I worked for the Australian government, and I can tell you that Canada was always better at predicting Australian wheat yields than Australia was. And it really comes down to investment in science and the applications of aerospace. And so one of the things that I see in Canada, like in UBC, is a real strength in advanced materials and in future technologies that aerospace is going to need. We heard that earlier from Mr. Donald and Ms. Medved. Advanced training, data analytics, technologies that are really going not just shaping aerospace, but shaping automotive and shaping other industries, not just transport industries. And so investment in those industries has a benefit for everybody, and not just aerospace.
Well, thank you. And then to the other panelists, are there roadblocks in the way in terms of government regulations or so on that precludes you from doing the type of R&D programming or investments that is required that could assist your businesses moving forward? Ms. Medvey, maybe you first.
I don't know that there's impediments. I don't know that there's impediments, but certainly there seems to be almost this idea we want innovation as long as it's been tried before and we can be sure that it works. So you're dealing with this kind of schizophrenic situation where, yeah, we want you to innovate, but don't be too innovative because that's a bit scary, and we don't, when you're talking about government procurement in that aspect, it can't be too innovative, or we can't be investing in those kinds of things. So, and I don't know what you do about that, to be really honest. I don't know what you do about that, but industry's pretty good at figuring out ways to to move forward and to move around blockages and so on. If it's a great idea and it's going to bear fruit, they'll usually find a way to get there. But
I'll second that.
Yeah, Mr. Hamilton, I was going to ask.
Yeah, I can't think of a government impediment, but I'll double down on the comment that's been made already that skilled labor in science and technology and engineering really is the foundation for building more innovation here, and keep investing in that through the universities, through research credit. The companies will find ways to innovate and go to market with it, make Canada an attractive place to do business with, and have the talent here so we can develop it, and the industry will win.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair.
So our last round of questions will go to the Liberal bench, and MP Assassi has generously offered his time slot to me, so it's a rare occasion that I have the opportunity to question witnesses. Interestingly, today we've heard a little bit about the ecosystem of the aerospace industry, and as we've heard, often what happens is we think of the aerospace industry as merely airlines. So I was delighted to actually have parts of the industry sector here that can talk about the other impacts. And one of the other areas that we keep hearing about is training. Now, in the last parliament, in the 42nd parliament, there was a motion 177, brought forward by former MP Stephen Pure from Kelowna Lake Country with respect to training pilot schools. So we know that there was a problem with respect to training pilots prior to the pandemic. This, I think, has just amplified the problem. And we talked a little bit about retraining people that already have the competencies. And we know that there is a system called PLAR, Prior Learning Assessment and Recognition, or Reconnaissance des acquis et des compétences in Quebec, that will do just that. If somebody has the competencies already, rather than retraining them for something that they already know, that we just fill in those gaps. If you'd like to speak to, and I believe Mr. Donald, you were the one that brought that up, the importance of leveraging the tools that we have in the toolbox so that we can get people off the bench quicker to get them into those jobs that we are going to need in terms of the relance économique that we have in front of us, and the importance of that, so that we can make sure that folks are moving off the bench quicker and also not getting discouraged retraining something they already know.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yes, unfortunately for the licensed trades in Canada, pilots, aviation maintenance engineers, we do not use PLAR. We don't care about competence. As I alluded to earlier, a AME working in Germany for Lufthansa for 20 years on an Air Canada aircraft, 737, comes here to work on exactly that same aircraft and is not granted a license because she didn't study exactly the same thing in Berlin that Transport Canada requires Canadian colleges to teach. So that individual's options are to go back to school for 2 years because there's no gap training in Canadian colleges. They don't have gap training for that one identified gap. So we have a system at CCAA for online assessment of foreign workers in non-licensed trades. It works well. For the licensed trades, which are in the most demand, AMEs and pilots, it does not because of Transport Canada restrictions. I'll stop there, but happy to elaborate.
Can I just say one thing too? That's if you can get them in the country under the foreign worker program. That's another that is an impediment, and we've had lots of trouble with it when we were, when pre-COVID, all kinds of issues. It's expensive to apply. It takes forever. Not to mention what happens on the foreign country side to have the workers come in. But that's how we get a lot of our skilled workers. You cannot populate an MRO like ours with just new grads. That's not going to work. You need much more skill than that. And so we did go to a foreign worker program, but it had all kinds of issues with it. So it's another area that could use some attention.
Thank you so much.
Could I just come in with a comment on it too? It's Michael here.
Quickly, I'm myself. I'm about to give myself the flag here.
30 seconds. I mean, we make a forecast of a demand for aircraft going out 20 years. Airbus does the same, and they roughly say that the current fleet will double over that period. So we're talking about 40,000 new planes. All of those need pilots, maintenance people, ground service. There's a global shortage of personnel in this field. So that just reinforces your challenge, is my point.
Thank you much. Thank you very much. And I will see the rest of my time. I want to thank everyone for being here today. As many of us have said, the aerospace industry is incredibly important. C'est très important dans le Québec.
It is very important in Quebec, in my riding, and in the ridings of a number of my colleagues here today. So thank you very much for testimonies.
I'd like to also gentle reminder to colleagues, for health and safety reasons, please wear your headset. It is imperative for our interpreters to be able to do the work that they are doing. I also ask the members to submit to the clerk as soon as possible your requested witnesses for the next study. And I just wanted to also mention, it came up during the presentations today that regular Canadians cannot participate in committee, and I want to just debunk that. Canadians are more than welcome to submit to the clerk of committee briefs, suggestions, and so on. So I urge people who are interested in the topics that they are hearing about at standing committees of the House of Commons to get involved. Communicate your concerns and your positions to the committee, because we do want to hear from folks. We do have, unfortunately, limited time to have everyone in front of us, but we do read all of the briefs that are sent to our way. So with that, I want to thank everyone. Merci beaucoup pour votre temps.
Thank you very much for your time today, and thank you to our interpretation services, to our IT team, our clerks, our analysts.
Meeting adjourned.